Hello, everybody, and welcome to ESF Connections. My name is Debbie Cavanis. I'm the Alumni Director at SUNY ESF, and we will be doing a number of department virtual updates throughout the academic year. So before I begin my introductions of our department for this segment, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping rules, especially for those of you that would like to ask questions. There will be a Q&A section at the end of our update. So if you are on YouTube or have a Gmail account, you can ask your questions right on the YouTube chat or say something segment. If you do not have either one of those, you can always email us at alumni@esf.edu. So our email address is right there, and we will put those into our chat, and we'll get to all of those at the end. So you may ask questions throughout. We'll hold them all to the end of the program, though. So thank you very much for joining us. This session is for the Landscape Architecture Department. So I would like to bring on Dr. Margaret Bryant, who is our chair of the Landscape Architecture Department and Associate Professor. So thank you, Margaret, for joining us today.
I guess I have to unmute. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So I know that you've been at ESF for quite a while, I think since 2008, but we have some folks from older alumni that are before that time period, and they don't know you very well yet. So, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what you did before coming to ESF, perhaps what led you to ESF, and then talk about some of your time here until you were appointed the actual chair in 2023.
I would love to tell you that. I kind of love to see who's here, but I'm assuming it's a mix of people that already know who I am and some who do not. So again, my name is Margaret Bryant, and I came to SUNY ESF in 2008, and this is my, I think, 17th year of teaching here. So it's been quite a while. Trying to think of how I would introduce myself to somebody I don't know, and in fact, can't even see here on the screen. I think one thing is that I'm a Southerner, and that's usually indicated by my accent. A lot of people recognize that. So I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I've spent my professional career kind of half in the South and half in the Northeast. Although increasingly with the going on 17 years here at ESF, increasingly it's the Northeast more than the South. But I was teaching at Virginia Tech. Prior to that, I had worked in Atlanta, kind of in engineering, land planning, ecological services, while having a degree in landscape architecture. But my professional practice was largely in multidisciplinary firms. And I went to work at Virginia Tech and taught there for 8 years, and then applied for the job here at ESF, and have continued my career here. When people ask me what I do, what do you do for a living? I always say I'm a teacher. And a lot of people assume I'm a K through 12 teacher when you identify yourself as a teacher. But I think that like that's the core of who I am. I love teaching. And I've really loved serving students over the years. I think it's fashionable in academia to say teaching's that other thing I do. What I'm really do is I'm this fabulous researcher who focuses on this narrow topic. And instead, I've devoted my career to serving students. And that's what I'm loving about being the chair now, is I just continue that in a different fashion. I'll say something about my area of specialization, though, so people will know. I come from the landscape planning end of landscape architecture. And so at ESF, I have taught the more natural resource focused content. I've taught, studios every semester I've been here, but I'm the one who teaches the students how to do site analysis. So it's, the land-based aspect of the profession and the ecological, but my PhD is in urban and regional planning. And so I also have kind of that city side, urban landscapes, neighborhood planning, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the bookends of my expertise.
Okay, And urban planning has been such a huge area for us lately. I know that that's coming up and very popular. Are you still teaching now, even as chair?
Yes, I am. I am. I'm. Sometimes I think maybe that was not the wisest choice to take on these classes, but um, my the area that I cover for the department, the natural resources ecological, has been actually it's hard to find a replacement for that. Our new hires, the new faculty, do a lot of different things, but none of them cover that particular thing. So for the time being, I am still teaching my classes. The benefit also is, and I see this going forward, even if I don't have to, if it's not because of a need, but because I just want to, I've taken on the freshman orientation or the first year orientation because I love the idea of getting to know each class as they come through. I think the chair should walk down the hall and into the studio and know the people, like know their names and understand who they are. And I worry about getting away from teaching and not knowing people.
That's great that you still want that one-on-one connection with our students. We're going to get to our incoming freshman class or incoming new student class in a little bit, but I know one thing that's been a huge topic for all of our alumni is the Marshall Hall renovation. And it wasn't a quick project. It was a 3-year project. The department was asked to leave Marshall Hall. The entire building was asked to vacate. And the department actually moved downtown in, I think it was May of 2020, so that you were all set up for the fall 2020 semester. So can you talk a little bit about how that was teaching down there, and then how you felt coming back to Marshall for the first time this fall semester to bring in our new class?
Well, you really can't tell the story about the department without talking about this period of exile. And that's what I call it. It's really hard to overstate the impact in a lot of ways of removing yourself from the campus to a building downtown and spending 3 years there. Weirdly, COVID kind of minimized it a little bit because the first year we were online. So we had offices downtown, but the students didn't come there for the first year. So that was 2021 academic year. But 2020, 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23, we were down there. So students would take a shuttle if they didn't have a car. We were on the 7th and 8th floors of a building near Hotel Syracuse, if people know where that is. And, we did the best we could. It was pretty decent space, but it was a former insurance company, and it really had that vibe, like cubicle land. And sometimes the most creative stuff doesn't necessarily come out of cubicle land. So it was a little bit of a challenge, but we made do. And students are really resourceful and troopers, really, so they came through it well. But it's just coming back to campus is so special. It means so much to us. And then people who know this building, Marshall Hall, it's just it's the identity of the program is so tied to this building in a lot of ways. So it's just really great to be back. And just for the students themselves, some of them have come through almost the entire program, their whole BLA program being away from the campus. So our current off-campus students, I think they were here just at the very beginning of their program on the main campus. But it's sort of unfortunate that they're off campus now, so they'll only spend one semester before they leave. I see there's a question that says, where did Margaret get her degrees? I could answer that. So being from Memphis, my first degree was in ornamental horticulture at Mississippi State University. And then my second degree was University of Georgia, Master of Landscape Architecture. And then the third, the PhD in urban and regional planning was University of Massachusetts Amherst.
So it's very interesting how you talk about the students that really didn't get to be on campus, and now we have this whole new group of students coming in that will be able to spend the entirety of their program in this new space. And you're right, that connection with Marshall Hall and the studio space and students being in there constantly. So I will say they have a much nicer place to sleep during studio now. So can you talk about our incoming freshman class? So these new students that are getting to come in and see this new space and be a part of this whole new area with the new studio space and the gallery. Can you talk a little bit about, the type of students that we're attracting for this year?
Yeah. First, I'll say one more thing about Marshall in general, and then I'll address the freshmen, our first year students. People remark about, I'm assuming that some of the alums who are listening to this have seen the photos of Marshall Hall because they've been on Facebook and LinkedIn and, various social media that ESF has promoted. But of course, obviously, it's always the same. Always the case that, the photos don't do justice to something and you have to walk through the space and be in it. But the most striking feature that I hear students commenting on is natural light. That the quality of light in the studio is so magnificent, and that in fact, other students from other programs are coming to our studios to work because it's just so pleasant. But I think that it's just a powerful creative space made possible by, for us, especially as landscape architects, being so, that merger between the indoor and outdoor, it was really felt now. So the first year students coming into it, we'll talk in a minute about the change in the curriculum, but we are integrating the students in the very first semester in the studio, very first semester of their first year in the program. They're taking their drawing studio. And we have given them desk in the studio. So, and they will start the regular studio sequence next semester. So that's a big change from the past, where sometimes the first year students felt a little alienated, like they were so excited to come join the landscape architecture department, like, discovered this profession. It seems so fascinating, but they spent the first year kind of at the fringes, really. And so it's been a pleasure to welcome them in. In terms of like their qualifications, or, it's funny, like I never look at that. I never look to see like, oh, the GPA is very high this year, or I kind of pride our ability to, I'm proud of our ability to take students where they are. And we have some brilliant students, but we also have some students that maybe didn't do so well in high school, because high school it doesn't foster the intellectual development of everyone. But our diverse program and emphasis on like visualization and some other things that might not have been put to the test in high school, can really make people blossom when they're here. What I will say is our numbers are growing back. Some alums may know that we've had a decline in enrollment for various reasons. I can talk about those. I think it's national to some extent, pandemic, located off campus, all these different things. But currently we're already picking up numbers before we even open the building. So it's great.
That is, once you see the space, you'll know why. So if you haven't seen it on social media, we can certainly link you into those after this program. But it is a phenomenal space. And I know you mentioned the natural lighting. Even to the point where as it gets sunnier and it's too bright, that it automatically goes opaque and kind of softens the lighting for in the studio space that has the skylights, the beautiful skylights. And I can see why students would love that. And it is really nice that our freshmen or first year students get to experience that right from the beginning. Yeah. So that is a change to the program. That is a big change to the program. So can you talk about, I'm not going to say what it is, can you talk about that big change to the program for our BLA students coming in for this freshman year?
Yeah. So there's been talk for years about possibly moving to a 4-year BLA program. But I think our mindset was such that it seems such a big challenge. How do you take a 5-year program that we feel committed to and somehow make it a 4-year program? And I think for the longest time, we looked at chopping off the last year. Like, well, how do you make a 5-year program into a 4-year program? Well, cut a year off. Well, what year would you cut off? Well, the last one. But when we sat down in the past, really just year and a half, and we as a faculty, we looked at it again. Kind of the light bulb moment was, we don't have to cut off the end. Why don't we cut off the beginning? That sounds a little crazy, because you think, well, they got all that stuff in the first year. You can't cut that off. It's general education requirements and stuff like that. But there are two things that kind of drove our thinking on that. One is we went through a strategic planning process, and the off-campus program, 53 years strong, is still something that the faculty is very committed to and sees as the central identity of the program in many cases. And by program, I hate to discount the MLA program, because we have two programs, MLA and BLA. But in thinking of the 5 years, obviously we're talking BLA. So the off-campus was something that, it could stand to be updated. There's various things that could happen with it, but we remain committed to it. Through that strategic planning process, we came to that conclusion. The other factor was when we talked to students about, what they were pleased with about the program and what they wish was improved. Almost always what they wish was improved was the freshman year. So we started looking into what was in that freshman year, and is there some way to put studios in them in that year? And the secret really is that we took some of our own courses and made them into general education classes. So by doing that,
always busy, Margaret. Your phone's ringing off the hook even at 7 o'clock at night.
By making some of the courses the students have to take anyway meet those general education requirements for the state, suddenly we freed up those credit hours, and then we were able to squeeze the program down. In the course of doing that, we did lose one studio. That's the only loss to the professional program. And that was the studio when people came back from off campus, and they usually were kind of checked out at that point. So all the core studios where you learn particular skills, those are maintained. The last one was called a thematic studio, and it was a little bit of a bonus at the end. And our accreditation standards don't require us to have a certain number of studios. You just need to cover the content, which we do. So that's how we went from 5 to 4. It is going through the SUNY approval process. But for the freshmen, we keep saying freshman / first year, the wording is changing on that. But for the first year students, we're launching them right into it because the demand is really high. First of all, families really care about this. It adds another year of tuition, and everybody cares about the cost of higher education. So we're moving the first year students right into this. And there's really no reason to think that we'll have any problem with the approval process. It's already been approved here on this campus through academic governance.
So that's great. I mean, a lot of work went into doing that and making it work. So congratulations to you and your department for being able to do that. And as you mentioned, it's a cost saving factor for families. That is very important. It makes us that much more competitive in the BLA market, so which is very nice. So do you want to answer that question now?
Yeah. So, does the 4-year BLA program still allow students to get licensed after graduation without an MLA? Yes, it does. Interestingly enough, a lot of programs across the country have gone from 5 years to 4 years. When I was at University of Massachusetts Amherst, they had a 4-year program. They called it a BSLA, Bachelor of Science in Landscape Architecture. And it was in a, I don't know, it seems like I honestly think it seemed a little inferior to 5-year BLA programs. You know, they're like, oh, well, the 5-year one clearly is better. And so I think, 20 years ago, the 5-year BLA was sort of a gold standard. That's very rapidly changing, and programs across the country are going to 4 years. So much so that the Landscape Architecture Accreditation Board, they don't bat an eye at it. They don't think anything of it when you change to 4 years, and they don't make you change the name of it. I was concerned about that because I didn't want it to be a Bachelor of Science in Landscape Architecture. I wanted to keep that BLA. And then in terms of licensure, there's no difference, although in the point system for licensure, you get one less point because you've spent one less year in education.
Okay, so slight effect, but nothing major. No. So that's good to know. I mean, I know you hit on this a little bit. The off-campus program is such an integral part of the education here, and it has been for now over 50 years. And it's really something that I think our alumni are really proud of. And it's something that I'm sure that they're very excited to hear that it is still staying, still in the 4-year program. It's going strong. So this is a perfect segue for me to bring in two of our guests. So welcome Matt Pottinger and Dan Cronin. So Matt and Dan are our co-chairs of the off-campus program. So Matt, thank you for joining us today. I'm glad that you're with us.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Glad to be here.
And Dan, thank you for joining us and taking the time to be with us today.
Sure, and thank you for having me. Happy to virtually meet everybody, and also happy to contribute to the off-campus program and the department as a whole. So thanks for setting this up and creating this.
Our pleasure. So you three know the off-campus program much better than I do. So I'm going to step off and let Margaret take over this portion, and Dan and Matt are going to share some information with you about the program. And I'm going to step into the background, but I just wanted to remind everybody that if you have questions throughout, you can put them in the chat on your YouTube, or you can email alumni@esf.edu. We'll get to those at the end. I know Dan might be doing some screen sharing. So if you just want to not pay attention to the chat anymore, we'll take care of that at the end. So I'm going to step off. Margaret, you can take it away.
So I think I'm going to preface this by saying something I didn't have a chance to say in the previously, and that is that we're doing a lot of hiring, and you may already be familiar with that because there has been some publicity about the latest hires. But we're at this point in time where we don't have a lot of the most senior faculty. A lot of people have retired. And so we have a changeover kind of happening in the faculty structure. We've been very fortunate to be able to hire 5 people in the past year. 5 people from, say, July of last year, 2022 to July of 2023. 5 people in a department of 11. So it is really a dramatic thing. And we've been blessed with wonderful applicants. Those applicants the people that we've hired, they do a couple different things for us. We've been very paying a lot of attention to the design core, strengthening design fundamentals, which we know are essential to landscape architecture, but we're also being very intentional about hiring researchers who also are landscape architects and have practice experience, but people who do funded research, because it's kind of the lifeblood of an institution like ours and a department like ours. So with that kind of mix, the off-campus program sits there. And we hired Dan just last year. He's been 1 year with us. Dan has a lot of international experience himself. He came here with that. And so we thought, well, how can we make sure that the off-campus program is healthy going into the future? And I talked to Matt about maybe having co-director of the off-campus program. And that's what's happened this past year, that Dan and Matt have worked together. And this is all to put the off-campus program on a really strong footing going forward. We don't have when you have a new faculty coming on, they don't have the history of, oh, well, we always have done this, and this is so important to us. We have to share that culture with the new people that we're hiring. And so that's been part of the plan. And Matt, maybe you would like to discuss this a little bit, and where are you taking that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I've been fortunate to be the director of this program for over 30 years. I can't believe that. I stepped in after Tony Miller, and I think we've continued to build the program, continue to build the rigor. We've developed. Essentially, the model is the same. Okay. We've done added some orientation class, preparation class, and we also added a 1-credit class when students return to better assess and reflect on the projects and do presentations. And they also mentor the students who are going to go the following year. So we've really, I think we've basically taken the model and just really fine-tuned it even more. And we're continuing to look at new potentials too, especially that open up with new technologies. And while COVID was a real challenge, right? Can't travel. It was even challenging to travel domestically. So we really, the program proved resilient and flexible. It was a real test of the program. And we were able to locate students located domestically. And we also learned how to do Zoom and online meetings. And now we're integrating that in with the off-campus program, as it's a great opportunity. Students are brought in all over the world, and we can all get together on Zoom and have a conversation. We can have a meal. We're setting up what we're called forums. We meet 4 times over the semester, and and each meeting is a different theme that's related to the stage of their off-campus experience. So, there's lots of great new opportunities too with technologies here. So I'd say it's the same program, but it's also new, and it's great to have Dan working with this, and because he brings in, a lot of experience and skills, and new ideas and technologies. So it's great. So I think we're at a really good place. And one of my objectives has been to really also increase our community engagement in places, have more deeper engagements with places by setting up strong contacts, projects in locations, etc. So that's some background for where it's at right now. If you want to jump in, yeah.
I just want to hi. Actually, Matt, mute.
Sorry.
I want to highlight the fact that even during what people sometimes refer to as a lockdown during COVID, the students We did postpone off campus till the spring semester of that year, which meant instead of going in the fall of 2020, which was so uncertain, students went in the spring of 2021. Is that right? But students did their projects. They did an off campus then. So as Matt was saying, it's really proven to be a resilient model that is so flexible that we were able to do that and make the best of a difficult situation. And then with the forums, you're saying, just to make sure everybody knows, I think, is that students in different locations come together, which is a very new. We didn't do that in the past, where say a group in Copenhagen, a group in Barcelona, and a group in, wherever the third place would be, would come in 4 times during the 3 months, meet together and exchange between the groups. Is that right? And then I thought maybe if you talk just a tiny bit about Nepal, I think that's a great community engagement.
Sure. I have worked with Nepali New American refugees here in Syracuse, and through them, I have a lot of contacts. And I thought, well, you really build on these connections between Syracuse and Nepal. So working with them, we set up an off-campus in Nepal. So I'm going next week. First time. I guess looking at the records, we had one group in Nepal back in 1976. And through these connections, we're working with people in Kathmandu, but we're also able to have a connection in this one village about 2 hours up in the hills outside Kathmandu. I think they might be called mountains. And again, pretty high elevation, and working in a farming village, and students will be able to stay there for several weeks and go back and forth between that village and Kathmandu. We're going to be also going over to the refugee camp, the remaining refugee camps, and be talking to community groups there about the possibility of helping to establish some farming there for them to sustain their livelihoods. So and that's the kind of thing we would like to support in other places and other groups. It means more investment of time and effort and funding, but I think it gives the students a really deeper experience. So so that's one of the objectives of the off-campus program, the directions right now.
I think this is a great opportunity for these students, and I love that it was birthed in Syracuse, from the Nepalese community here and your association with them. So Dan, I alluded to your background, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself, talk about your research interests, because it's a chance to also show some of what we're doing in the department with new faculty, but then, particularly what you're doing with Matt for the off-campus program.
Sure. Thanks, Margaret. Also just to introduce myself, my definition of how I identify aligns with what Margaret mentioned earlier. I identify myself as a teacher rather than a professor. I don't like to introduce myself that way, just because it comes with an air of it's not as personable to present myself like that to students. So I'm in it for the teaching component and the experience. And a lot of that is based off of kind of my background. So my undergraduate degree is from my BLA from Landscape Architecture program at Louisiana State University, where at the time I was able to have an opportunity for my own off-campus there right after Hurricane Katrina. And this was, helped and supported by a faculty advisor that really, helped me to guide what that would look like for studying abroad and doing that myself. So it was a great opportunity in Istanbul, Turkey, which was a 6-month period to basically create my own off-campus experience. That turned into the spark of really wanting to gather more expertise in international kind of opportunities for education, but also for practice. So that led me back to after a year back in the States, and then 6 months in a working for a firm in China, came back to Istanbul, and then 5 years later, I found myself really, excited about a passion for teaching and education and landscape architecture. So pursued a master's degree at University of Oregon, where I found a process to understand complexity and complex adaptive management systems called alternative futures. So I worked under Professor David Holz in his lab to basically start to answer some of these bigger picture research questions centered around natural resource management to comprehensive watershed planning. And so, throughout my career so far, because I'm still early career, I've seen a lot of different scales, and I've been able to see, experience through expertise at the site scale, specifically with urban stormwater systems and urban ecology. And then all the way up to the kind of the municipal scale with urban ecology, and all the way up to the regional scale with complex adaptive systems. So that's kind of the research focus. And then I guess that my off-campus experience led me into my interest, working with Matt to make sure the legacy that has been defined by the professors that set it up in the first place, and then all of you as alumni, that's to keep that identity and to keep what has been instilled, from day one, and all the testimonials that you've provided. I think that's something that has to be kept in place. So it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm just really excited about being able to contribute to it and to build it out. So in the spirit of engagement and engaging alumni, this is something that we've done for our students with the off-campus, but I'd like to do a waterfall. Hear me out. I'm going to count to 5, and in the chat, I want you to type one word that explains your off-campus experience. Just one word, okay? So, and I'll read them out because I'm not sure if you're able to see the chat. So ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go. Okay, it looks like I'm not able to see the chat, but maybe I'll check the comments here.
Should be able to, or if people are posting them. Can they?
Oh, looks like we got some comments.
As you say, so I'm going to jump back in here just to say most of our folks probably are not logged in on YouTube. I think most of our questions are coming through the alumni at esf.edu. So I don't think people are using that feature too often. So I just didn't want you to be waiting.
No worries. It looks like we
Click
have
on comments.
Oh, you've got some there.
Yeah.
So this is, I think 4 is a good sample size for now, but we've got spectacular, restorative, critical, eye-opening. So this is, we'll use this as our survey instrument for next steps. I think this is really, spectacular, restorative, and critical. So from Jennifer there. So that's something that we want to incorporate is like different tools for engagement and being able to connect with alumni, but also current students that are there. So if it works for all of you, I'd like to show kind of what we're co-producing with Matt, and it's basically a tool to where a resource where students can look to while they're conducting the off-campus, but also where you can all see some of your efforts from your off-campus while you're conducting that. If that works for the time, does that work for you, Margaret?
I think we could spend, a few more minutes on that.
Okay. So I'll jump into presentation mode here. Okay. Nice. And is everybody able to see that the background that says about the off campus? So this is we haven't gone live with this. It's still under construction, so please don't tell anybody about this. But basically, what we have is our off-campus hub, where we're using that as a resource where students that are thinking about opportunities can have a hub to go to, but also students that are in the off-campus program can refer to this for different types of resources or connecting to faculty members for meetings or different types of ways to schedule, directed kind of forums that Matt was mentioning earlier. So basically what it has is different types, still under construction policy, apologies there, but it has, it's going to have different kind of embedded PDFs with our handbook basically. But kind of what we're working to build out right now is this geospatial component where folks can go to the locations, including alumni, of where they've conducted their off-campus study, but also to see and demonstrate their project and also what they conducted with their study. So that can also be, as we have kind of put it here, like also their sketchbooks and some of these wonderful illustrations that have been produced. So anything from news and events, information for alumni, and different ways that we're, promoting the Festival of Places, and then also links to social media. So this is something, it's still under construction. So stay tuned, and we'll keep you in the know of whenever when we fully go live with it. And thank you again. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone, and looking forward to contributing to the off campus.
So maybe one last thing about the off-campus program. Dan mentioned the going back and visiting some projects from the past and trying to document them in this digital format. And I think it's a little funny in a way that we moved back to this brand new building. It's so shiny, and it's a lovely blend of the historic and very current and modern architecture. But there's something about I don't know what it is about this moment. I guess maybe with the changes in the program or something, but I think it's making a lot of us sort of nostalgic. And so we're really interested in mining the archives in a way that I don't think we have done recently in the 17 years I've been here. But we've been mining the off-campus archives, and we have a lovely gallery on the first floor of Marshall Hall, so that instead of if somebody walks in and they're wondering what programs are in this building, if you come into the first floor and turn right, there's a gallery with a beautiful glass wall facing the corridor. And Matt Pottinger is putting together the first exhibit for the gallery, and it is a retrospective of the 53 years of off-campus. So we've been mining our archives, sketchbooks and student projects, and creating an exhibit, but also it won't end there. This is what Dan's digital platform is, to extend it. So Matt, would you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with that?
Sure. It really is in some ways overwhelming, because if you think of it, 53 years, every year, groups going around the world, different places, sometimes 11 places, 12 places, and then bringing in all the projects and sketchbooks and all the memories. So it's been a challenge to we're really creating a framework for people to come in and get a sampling of the scope of the off-campus program. We've been able to go through the list of all the places, and we have something like over 180 distinct places that we've been to in 53 years. There's no other program in landscape architecture that has that kind of thing, and the uniqueness of the experience. So it's it's been interesting to go through. It's actually really time consuming because I'm going through the archives and I pull out projects and I start reading them. And it's like, I'm reading the direct experience of somebody, whatever, 40 years ago in, in Peru. So it's that kind of experience, the richness and the depth of the off-campus program, which it's really amazing. So trying to give some platform for that, and it will be open next week. So I think in time for the alumni weekend, and I'm not sure how long it's going to run, but if any of you are here in Syracuse or if you need need a reason to visit the new Marshall Hall, definitely come for the off-campus exhibit as well.
And you also have you ought to mute again. You also have things, it's a very sensory kind of exhibit. You're not just looking at things, posters on the wall, but you have sketchbooks that people can flip through, and you have a way for people to engage and participate. So you want to maybe the last couple words on that?
Yeah, so I did send out something through the alumni, asking folks to send in what we're calling postcards. If it basically photograph an image from your off-campus experience, and also a short story about a memory, but really how it was meaningful or transformative for you. So we'll send out that again. If any of you want to, who've registered for this evening's event, I think we have your email. I'll send out this solicitation again, and we're going to put these postcards up in the gallery. We already have a good number. The ones that we've received so far are amazing. They're great. So really, it would be great to have others as well. Yeah, thanks.
So I think at this point we might answer some questions. Are there any topics that we haven't addressed yet that you're interested in?
So I just want to come on and say I haven't seen any questions come up yet, so we'll give them a little bit of time. But I did have a couple of folks that were pre the first 1970 trip off campus that are very sad that they were deprived of doing the off-campus experience. And I know another thing is that we in our alumni magazine are highlighting George Curry for Where Are They Now? And he was involved with George Earl in the first off-campus experience, and I believe it was in Antigua in Guatemala, where they took the whole class down there, because that was the first time they were kicked out of Marshall because of a renovation, and that was their solution. That was how the off-campus program, I believe, started, with the two of them.
If I could say one thing, we will have the film of that was made of that first group in the gallery exhibit, so you can come and see that. 1970. It was made in 1971. It's great.
That's incredible. So I do have a question from Ken. He's saying, besides studio changes, what coursework has been eliminated to make the BLA 4 years? He said things like surveying, for example.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we haven't had surveying for the whole time I've been here. So that's 16 years. I don't know when that was phased out, but I like your question, Ken, because I think it's sort of, I read in there sort of a subtext of, application, being engaged in the landscape, tactile. I'm going to characterize landscape architecture education as moving away from some of that physical part of being engaged in the landscape over time. That's, more digital, et cetera. But we're actually making a very intentional move to balance that now here. Like, for example, in our foundation studio this year, for the first time in a long time, we have drafting boards with May lines on them. So students are back working, doing hand drawing as a real core of the beginning of the process. And, we're resisting the temptation to move quickly into the digital. I purchased like the last 20 May lines in the country. But we have now 42 of them, but we have 42 drafting boards and 42 May lines. So I know that's not surveying, but we are now like re-engaging with the curriculum and thinking through how we can ground it a little bit more. I would say, I don't think we'll go back to necessarily a surveying course, although it would be wonderful if it was an elective. I see students out here doing surveying all the time, so it seems like they could be an elective for our students. But we have like a faculty member named Thomas Hogg who's really interested in having students do some degree of implementation, even if it's just staking out a planting plan or something like that. So we're trying to kind of hit that sweet spot between the futuristic, like virtual reality, which is another area Aiden Ackerman is exploring, but also the hand drafting and the implementation. It's a bit of a balancing act, but we think it can be done. As far as like what has been eliminated to get to that 4 years, it's really converting our courses like Digital Methods 1, which is a digital graphics course. We made that a general education arts elective. History of landscape architecture is now a social science general education class. And the only thing that we had to eliminate that was part of the studio sequence is that final thematic studio, which was, I think, something like the 6th in the sequence or 7th. So that was it. Everything else we've maintained.
Thank you, Margaret. I know we got a question about if there's going to be an alumni event at the ASLA this year. So yes, we will be out there at the tailgate, but we will not be hosting an off-campus event like we usually do in that area. It just wasn't possible this year. We're hoping to bring it back for next year. But if you can't get out there, always come to Syracuse. We have an alumni event during homecoming this week, kind of getting a sneak peek at the Marshall studios and the gallery. So that is Friday evening of homecoming. So hopefully you've registered for that. And I know we're talking about doing another possible event in the spring as well. So something to look forward to. We'll check they want to know if the video could be taken of the exhibit, so of the gallery space. So we can work with our communication staff to get over there and take kind of a video, and maybe we can post that up on our website or email it out to folks. And then Donna would like to hear a little bit more about the MLA program, which we really didn't talk about very much this evening. So Margaret, do you want to kind of touch upon that a little bit for her?
Absolutely. So I think in some ways the MLA program is just kind of kept along, maintained, not a lot of changes. That said, I anticipate a lot of changes in a way in the graduate program mix going forward. So the Master of Landscape Architecture program, I'll say a little bit about numbers, actually. We used to always maintain each MLA 1, 2, and 3 of a class of around 12 students. That program, especially when we were located downtown, dipped to 5 students per cohort. So, 15 total in the program as opposed to, 36. It's a huge, change. So we're growing that back slowly. This fall, we have seven amazing people who've joined us. So we're creeping back up and hoping to sustain that number of 12. The graduate program in general depends on the ability to help fund those students, to provide them assistantships and somehow help cut the cost of the graduate education, which of course is coming upon on top of somebody's undergraduate education and possible student loans and that sort of thing. So it's always critical to be able to provide students financial support. That grows the program too. So rather than being so curricular focused right now, we focus more on how to make it sustainable for people, top quality applicants, how to make it financially sustainable for them. And, scholarships help with that. Assistantships help. Research like Dan is doing. He's able to fund graduate students. The changeover in faculty means that we have new opportunities to mentor graduate students. So we have, for example, Dr. Nazanin Ghaffari that we hired, whose interest is in, I'm going to say maybe spatial justice, but she's interested in particularly patterns of exclusion in public space. So she's able to push the curriculum in ways that she has depth that can add to the curriculum in ways we haven't been able to do it before. And she currently is teaching the behavioral factors class and the research methods class. So she's definitely already kind of plugged into the MLA program. We have a faculty member named Ellen White, who's a PhD from Rutgers, and her background is transportation planning. I anticipate she's going to build the MLA program significantly too. But then, we haven't had transportation planning expertise in a long time. I don't know if maybe ever. So should we have new courses that maybe help these new faculty, establish those areas so students can study them? Yet to be determined what those things are. And while I'm going down the list of faculty, I should say all of them. So we had Dan of the 5. Dan was the first, hired last summer. And then just this summer, we hired, as I mentioned, Nazanin Ghaffari, Ellen White, Jean Yang, who's a practitioner who worked for Studio MLA in Los Angeles, but also was a spatial justice fellow at the University of Oregon prior to coming here. So she also brings that social justice orientation. And Deborah Koo, who is an architect. We actually have 2 architects in this group. Nazanin Ghaffari is an architect, and Debbie Koo is an architect. And they are, and Debbie in particular is helping to shore up the foundation design. So before I leave the graduate thing, I wanted to say also that the move to a 4-year BLA means that we're renewing our attention to the MSLA, the Master of Science in Landscape Architecture, because we already have students, who go through a 5-year program. So I got like a relatively small number who say, I really like a 6th year here and go for the MSLA. But now that we're moving to this 4-year, we anticipate that that's going to significantly increase the numbers who want to do a 1-year, or it's a 30 credit hour. So if they're able to do 30 credit hours in a single academic year, then they can get the Master of Science in Landscape Architecture for that, what would have been their 5th year. So those, you're speaking of the MLA program specifically, that's a new dynamic. We did not have a substantial cohort of MSLA students for some kind of synergies to develop with the MLA students. Now we have that opportunity. And we also have faculty who are working with Master of Science and PhD students in the Graduate Program in Environmental Science, or GEEPS. So that's another group of graduate students that are kind of in the mix. So the future of the MLA program, certainly near and dear to our hearts. I have an MLA myself. We're very, committed to strengthening it as much as we can. And I think, renewed attention to the curriculum and re-energizing it, just like we're trying to do with the BLA, is kind of where we're going next.
Excellent. Great to hear that. Eugene would like to know how many first-year students were accepted into the program this year.
I do not know how many were accepted without pulling up a spreadsheet, but I can tell you how many came. So we have 24 students in the first year right now. I looked back. I did look for those numbers at 13. 2 years ago, we had 13. I mean, this is where we have been. And that may be historically a low ebb, 13. I don't know, Eugene, when you were here, but there were certainly classes of 50 first-year students or more. Even in the time I've been at ESF, the average number for a class would be, I'd say 35 to 40 was a common number of students per cohort. We have shifted where the average is more like 18 to 22. And as we have one class, the seniors, where there are 10 students in the class. So we do have a little bit of a climb, to build up the curriculum. Our target is 30 per cohort would be pretty comfortable for us for the undergraduates. But I'm proud of the fact that we've gone from 13 2 years ago to 24 this fall.
Excellent. And then we'll keep it growing. Once everybody sees the new space, you'll be overrun.
It's true. I mean, we grew it, to that point with not being able to show the building.
Right. Which is amazing. Credit to your staff and everybody here at the college and our admissions office to be able to do that as well. And I'm sure the 4-year portion probably helped as well, being a little bit more competitive. So I don't see any more questions. So I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us, all of our alumni that are online, and Margaret, Dan, and Matt, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for joining us for our ESF Connections. We'll be back again with more department updates throughout the year, so stay tuned. Take care, everybody, and we'll be following up with emails with additional information. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.